Everybody. Welcome to July 2023. Can you believe it? The year is halfway over and 2023 is rolling up out here. Okay. But 2023 has been very interesting, particularly this week. I've got to talk about this stuff while I'm in the middle of sermon preparation, but I've got to talk about what has transpired over this week, particularly with these Supreme Court rulings. This is an activist runaway court, okay? And are determined to turn everything back to honestly before 1776, if you ask me. But it was a difficult week politically. Many rights are now being dismantled. Roe v. Wade was simply the first one. It's gonna go, affirmative action, LGBTQ rights. It's now legal based on the precedent that dropped yesterday that you can discriminate you can deny as a business person an opportunity to refuse to serve someone. So education, student loans, across the board. This court is out of control. But let me say this, that even as these things are happening in the world, that we have to understand that when these things do happen, the consequences of people not voting comes into play. I want to go back and talk about the decision as far as this court, because the plan has always been to pad the court. That's been the plan. Because if we can codify discrimination, if we can codify making people feel less than humans, if we can codify that, if we can make it legal, then that gives those who are in power the opportunity to do what they want. But I want to just begin this conversation around the whole notion of how incendiary and how nefarious this week really is. And I need people not to hide and be like ostriches and hide their heads in the sand and not understand how deeply evil this past week has been. But even in addressing the evils of the week, there is a counter to that, because I don't just like pointing out problems. At least I like to offer possible correctives if there can be. I don't, honestly, to be honest with you, I don't know what you can really do with this country other than it has to fall. And I think we're in the beginning of the fall. I think that has already started because, a house divided can't stand. And we're becoming increasingly more divided in this country, more so than ever. But then again, we have to look at the foundation of this country, how it was founded, why it was founded, the political and the economic base upon which it was founded was built on the subjugation of people who are African descendant. So let's just keep it a buck. Has been predicated on the actual genocide and the stealing of land of Native people. So let's be clear about how it was founded and why it was founded. So let's be clear about that. But let's look at where we are in 2023 and how now political things that have had 50-year, 40-year precedents are now being eroded and taken away. And we have basically a 6-3 majority. And this is just the beginning. This really is just the beginning. But we go back to President Obama's last term, the second half of his last term, when he nominated Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court. Because there wasn't a Democratic majority in the Senate, that nomination was never brought to a vote. And that nomination, although Merrick Garland now is the Attorney General, it sat for a year. So that means let's just take it back to 2014, 2015. Had he been on the court, we would have maybe perhaps a 5-4 situation with possibly a swing. But now we have a 6-3 major majority conservative bench. And so now we're dealing with the repercussions of that. So then the person who shall not be named nominated 3 judges to the Supreme Court, 3 activist judges, whose the deal was one who is, I believe, is a sexual predator, nominate these people to the court, who then, although they lied and said they wasn't going to do it, they did exactly what they intended to do, which is to roll back certain rights of not just Black people, but brown people, members of the LGBTQ community, education. Now it's going to be harder to deal with people trying to get access to education. But again, I still want to offer some correctives. Now let's deal with affirmative action. Let's deal with that, and also the student loan crisis as well. Here's the thing: when we were in the middle of a pandemic, the person who shall not be named then sent out all of the stimulus packages, as well as there was PPP loans, EID loans, EIDL loans, and all of these things to bring the economy back. Okay, so that means that there was a political decision made to fix an economic problem, which basically means printing more money. And so this inflation that we see right now honestly started with before this current president. Because when you print more money and you put more money out into the circulation, that creates an inflationary, that triggers an inflationary event. Okay, so they can find money to keep their businesses from going out of work, but they somehow can't find enough money for people to have access to education. I just feel the spirit of our luminaries, James Baldwin and Malcolm X, speaking in these times, because here's the thing: we've got enough texts and we've got enough words that came before us that we can look back to understand the context of our times. We for those of you who are Christian, we have a biblical text. For those of you who are of other faiths, you have your scriptures. We have plenty of texts in which we can look to help us to understand and dissect these times. And so if we talk about the educational piece, Malcolm X said this, is that education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today. So if you take away people's educational opportunities, they can't level the playing field and to create better lives for themselves. Because that's the whole purpose of going to college. That's the whole purpose of getting student loans so that you can finish college. That's the whole goal, is to create somehow a better life for yourself down the line once you're able to figure out what you want to do with that education. But as I'm listening to and looking at all of this happen within the last week or so, I really feel the spirit of James Baldwin. Honestly, I really feel the spirit of James Baldwin, who said this. He said that the paradox of education is precisely this: that as one begins to become conscious, one begins to examine the society in which one is being educated. I'll repeat that. The paradox of education is precisely this: that as one begins to become conscious, one begins to examine the society in which one is being educated. So we've got to examine, why would you restrict educational opportunity for people, particularly when there's a person on the bench who benefited from affirmative action his entire life? A fellow Georgian. I'm not going to name his name either, because I don't believe in naming. I mean, I name demons on my own, but I'm not going to name demons in the public. Benefited, went to the best schools, has this pedigree, has access to positions of power, and yet will deny, effectively closing the door behind him, so that he gets to be the only one and no one else gets to come behind him. It's really, really evil. But I want you all to begin to think about evil this way. Instead of, I hear too many, too many of the thinking of the pitchfork guy. And there's one guy sort of manipulating evil in the world. Evil is about systems. Evil is about collective. There is a mob mentality of people who join together to perpetrate evil in the world. Okay. For those of you who are Christian, I'll give you the example of Jesus. It was a political decision to sentence Jesus to death. That's a political decision. There was a trial, and there were people who co-signed it and voted on it, said crucify him, and there you have the crucifixion. Okay? Political decisions that affected an economic decision under the structure of an empire, the Roman Empire. So we got to set these things in motion. So those of you who want to just kind of go in your closet and you don't want to think about politics, you don't want to turn on the news, you don't want to keep up with this stuff, that's on you. But I, as a person, I had to keep up with all this stuff. Number one, I think it's interesting to me, but number one, I want to know what's going on in the world as a citizen of the world. Okay. I want to know what's going on. And so that way I can navigate how I'm going to roll in this world and in this society. So here we have people who would dare, and I think if we begin to think about evil as a collective and systemically, we can better deal with the brunt of when it happens to us. That is the reason why the civil rights movement was effective, was a collective coming together against systemic evil, but now they want to roll back those gains that were made under the civil rights movement. And since then, and in the last 50 years, they want to roll back those gains because it is a systemic evil that is being perpetrated. It's not some one little guy standing around, making people do what they want to do. No, Jesus spoke of people. He said, love your enemies, not love the enemy. Enemies, meaning that you're going to have multiple enemies. Okay. Bless those who persecute you, meaning there are going to be those, not just one guy, not just one entity. There are going to be many people who are going to persecute you. All right. And here's the one time I agree with Paul. If we say Ephesians 6:12 is attributed to Paul, we've got to begin to think of this systemic evil that's being perpetrated against a great number of people as powers and principalities. All right. So I'm going to read to you Ephesians 6:12 if you're not familiar with it. And I'll read it in several versions so that you get the understanding of where we're going here. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. That happens to be the New International Version and the way it is phrased, New International Version. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Let me read to you also the same verse within the New Revised Standard Version. For our struggle is not against enemies of blood and flesh, but against rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. New King James Version. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. So understand, my friends, that there are powers at play, authorities at play to systemically keep a certain group in power, a certain group of privilege within power. Now, when I said that Baldwin sort of speaks to what I'm feeling in this moment, because what we have is, it's just, look at the makeup of the court. I just need y'all to look at it. We got three women who are diverse. One Jewish, one Latino, one Black, who are holding up the standard bearer, as far as I'm concerned, who are trying to keep things going and progressing up. And meanwhile, we have a supermajority who were recruited to the court because of their extreme conservative beliefs, who these people talking about especially during the confirmation of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, talking about she's going to be an activist judge. Well, who's been more active? I mean, this week, where the activist judges, justices have been that conservative six. Okay, they're completely intent, which is the reason why they're put there, to roll back the rights and privileges when we're trying to create a more diverse society, a more perfect union. They don't want none of that. All right. They don't want it, because that means that principalities and powers no longer get to be in power. And there are people who can come up and raise up, who can have access to opportunity and access to systems. Okay. All right. James Baldwin says this. He said that it is certain in any case that ignorance aligned with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. Ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy that justice can have. King said it also. A threat to justice, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so we're dealing with very perilous times. And so what does this have to do with the politics of business? Well, this is an economic, because power is tied to economics. Okay. Power is tied to being in a position of power means an economic power. That's why there's the reason why the person who shall be not be named was elected, because people thought, well, we don't need a politician. We need somebody who's good in business, and we need somebody who's rich, and we need somebody. That was the argument at the time, that somehow an outsider can fix things, but the outsider was really brought in to tear up things. And there's still that strain of people trying to get him back in so that he can further tear down and dismantle, if there has been progress, the appearance of progress that have been made. All right. Now, here is another thing that I want to piggyback on, because again, I'm feeling the spirit of James Baldwin telling us from the heavens what's really going on. All right. Don't be surprised that what is being done politically translates to something more sinister and more evil. Now, what's interesting to me is that we're, and I'm not a lawyer, but just speaking with, hearing the court decisions, the traditionalists are saying we want to keep the Constitution in its original intent. All right. These are the constitutional traditionalists. Whatever they rule upon is based on what the Constitution, some 250 years ago, some guys in some tights and some wigs said that we're supposed to abide by within the 21st century. All right. So that's their justification, that whatever the Constitution was originally intended, we got to keep it in place. We got to keep it because, that's what the Constitution really originally intended. But then there was a political decision made between those framers of the Constitution, who landowners, okay, again, powers, principalities, people of economic means. One group says, well, I want to keep my slaves or enslaved people. And the other group was like, well, nah. So the compromise was to say that those who had human property would be counted as 3/5 of a person. So now we're talking about not only a political decision, but now we're going to set up a system of voting. First, you had to be a white male landowner. But now, if you're not a white male landowner, then we're going to count the property of those folks who were slave holding as 3/5 of a person. Now those folks look like me. So when you say you want to keep the Constitution in its original intent, I'm, as an African descendant person, going to feel some kind of way about that. So that means you don't want to progress beyond the very myopic view of the world at the time in the 1700s. And you're going to say that, no, we're going to keep it just like it is. And think that people are not going to say anything about that and not going to have a problem with that. Just as affirmative action was never about race quoting. It was about trying to seek out persons who were not a part of the system, who was marginalized, who did the work. Our First Lady and a former First Lady, Michelle Obama, President Obama, worked hard to get into those schools. Now, I know there was a movement this week, sort of, we talked about HBCUs. My family are the products of HBCUs. I went to an HBCU seminary. And so we understand why HBCUs were created. I mean, well, I hope you do. Okay. I hope you can understand why HBCUs, even as the economics of HBCUs has been in jeopardy, and partly, and not partly, but wholeheartedly because of rollbacks of financial support at the government level. And so we see where HBCUs are struggling to keep their alumni involved. And there's just been some historic struggles. But even in spite of that, our HBCUs have educated Black people numerous times, and we right now sitting a heartbeat away from the presidency is an HBCU graduate. And so they're continuing to create leaders in a society that still tells us that we're 3/5 of a person, but they're still creating leaders who are still contributing members of the society, who are still leading and succeeding in spite of. Now, I have a different take in light of the affirmative action decision. There's going to be a push, of course, to promote HBCUs, and as there should be. There's going to be certainly a push, and I thought I saw somewhere, hey, just pick one. There's 100. And so HBCUs, just pick one. But I think also, too, if we are truthful about where we are in the world right now, is that all of the people that want to go to college and that are enrolling in college, I think that people have to choose. If we are talking about freedom and liberation, should be free to choose the schools that they want to go to that lines up with where they are personally. So that means if it's an HBCU, then let it be an HBCU. If it's a Harvard or Yale, if it's an Ivy League, let it be a Harvard or Yale and Ivy League. Knowing that you may go into spaces that are hostile, but if that is what your goal is, then you should be allowed to go into those spaces. Now, what they've done effectively is to create obstacles, to make it harder for you, to make you feel like this is going to be a harder journey for you. But here's the thing, and we have all had that talk. We always know we gotta bring our A game to the plate, no matter what sphere we're in. We've got to bring our top game to the plate. We've always known that. We have those talks. We have those talks. And y'all know the talk. You got to be twice as good. Now, is that fair? No, it's not. But we all know that we have to bring our A games when we come into these spaces that are hostile to us. We know this. And so this is just another attempt to try to distract, because that's what these are. These are distractions to distract us from being all that God has created us to be, because God said that I was fearfully and wonderfully made. So I don't, what you say about me doesn't have anything to do with me. That's your problem. That's a personal problem that you have. If you have a problem, then you need to talk to the creator that created me, because this is what you're going to get. You're going to get all this plus the smoke. And when I say the smoke, I mean, you're going to get the best of what I have to bring to the table. Okay. So if you got a problem with that and you're jealous of that, you don't like it because it comes in this package, that's a personal problem that you have to deal with. And you have to check your insecurities at the door, because I'm coming with everything I got, because I have been endowed, if I can use the words of these framers, with all the best that the Creator has given to me. And so I want to say to people who may be feeling somewhat depressed and somewhat discouraged, don't be. All right? Don't be. Because when we're talking about these principles and these powers, these principalities and powers, James Baldwin said this: people who treat other people as less than human must not be surprised when the bread they have cast on the waters comes floating back to them poisoned. Now, I'm going to say that again. People who treat other people less than human must not be surprised when the bread that they have cast on the waters comes back, floating back to them poisoned. Now, James Baldwin is not advocating poisoning anybody, but what that means is basically you reap what you sow. If you sow into the universe evil, bad, it comes back to you the same way. And so it's really kind of a dangerous thing to continue to uphold this systemic evil. It's dangerous. And it's dangerous to the people who perpetrate it. It's dangerous because what it does is opens up a whole can of worms of people coming out the woodwork, all because you don't know what is going to send people over the edge. You just don't know. And so as much as is possible, we have to counteract these things by beginning to create systems of our own, but also to dismantle oppressive systems where they exist. That means oppressive systems in the church, oppressive systems in government, oppressive systems economically, oppressive systems on Wall Street, oppressive systems on Main Street, oppressive systems in nonprofit spaces. It's got to be torn down. It can't stand. Now, here's the thing. Now, and I wanted to kind of leave with this. I want to leave with this because let me just say a couple more things. All right. Does the law exist for the purpose of furthering, this is Baldwin again. Does the law exist for the purpose of furthering the ambitions of those who have sworn to uphold the law? Or is it seriously to be considered as a moral unifying force, the health and strength of a nation? When you start messing with laws and you start making laws unjust, the very health and strength of a nation is in jeopardy. That's why I believe we're in the fall of empire, to be perfectly honest with you. Because law should be furthering it. They're intending it to further their own ambitions. That's what they're intending to do. But what you're doing is seriously jeopardizing the health and strength of a nation if we intend to look at Baldwin's question. Okay? Now, let me say this, is that in these models, and I'm going to come back and say something a little bit more about it, but there's this tone of Self-Care Saturday. We have to build back into models and into these spheres where we work, the notion of self. Not for selfish reasons, not simply to hold up selfish gain, But because we're taught educationally to sacrifice ourselves for the greater good, that doesn't work. It's not sustainable. Because if there is no more you, then there is no more you to be able to contribute to the world. So that means that we've got to begin to design our lives in a way that we not only give our best, but we also give the best to ourselves, meaning that we pursue health, we pursue happiness, we pursue emotional well-being, we pursue emotional intelligence, we pursue education that does not oppress. Because you gotta question the education that you get that tells you that you're better than somebody. Because once you start thinking and drinking your own Kool-Aid, you start believing that, and you get to be like that person on the bench who has effectively closed the door on the rights that he was able to excel to. So when I say the politics of business, and I may have to come back because I just want to get this off my chest right now. Let me say this, that I'm using Baldwin's words. Baldwin is in my spirit. But anyone who has struggled with poverty knows how extremely expensive it is to be poor. Now I'm going to do a whole teaching on that. So just get with it. I'm going to do a whole teaching on that. Anyone who has struggled with poverty knows how extremely expensive it is to be poor. And so these powers and principalities want you to retreat. They want you to go and hide. They want you uneducated. They want you broke, busted, and disgusted. They want you living in neighborhoods that are crime-ridden. They want you systemically oppressed. That's what they want. Because if I can just continue to keep you thinking that you're less than human, then you're going to act less than human. So what is the corrective? The corrective is that you go forth and begin to create a life that is above all that you can think or imagine, that you not get bogged down into the distractions, that you not allow people to sacrifice your humanity, that you do not allow principalities, powers, even they sit next to you at church, to keep you in a state and in a status that is less than what God has created for you to be. Do you hear me? So when you decide that you don't want to vote, because honestly, it's more important that you vote in the elections in the midterm, what we call the midterms. It's more important that you vote in those elections because those elections, especially those congressional elections, is how we got here. When we let's go back to the Obama administration. We had a Democratic majority in both houses. That each time we had a midterm, the majority, the Democratic majority, kept being eroded away. So now, as a part of this last midterm, now we no longer have a Senate majority. So that means that people like those activist judges that have been on the bench, those last three, now we just got it back of a balance. But now that means what we lost, guess what? What we gained in the Senate, now we lost it in the House. So you see we're not voting, how that messes things up. Now, what do we do in the meantime? We continue to be the awesome and great and powerful people that we are, and we believe that. So that means you don't let folks tell you that you're less than. You don't let people deny you of your humanity. You go about being the wonderfully and fearfully created people that you have been created to be. And then you are also co-creators with the creator of your understanding, with the deity of your understanding, in creating a new reality for yourself and for your family and for your loved ones. while you still have breath, because tomorrow is not promised. So if you need to start today, getting your stuff together, then start today. If you need to start, because all we got is this moment right here. That's all we got. We don't have tomorrow. So, I had to get this off my chest today. I don't know. I may not be here tomorrow. But while we are here, while there is breath coursing through your veins, while there is breath coursing through your lungs and blood coursing through your veins, it is now our opportunity to be the change. I got issues with Gandhi, but if he in fact said it, then be the change that you want to see in the world. Okay. So I'll be back. I'm gonna stay on this politics of business, because y'all missing the signs here, and you're missing opportunities. That's because all of this stuff works in tandem with each other, because they're busy plotting and planning. We need to be also plotting and planning on the opposite side of things, getting ourselves together, working collectively to dismantle this injustice, dismantling these systems that are oppressive, but also don't be afraid to have those money conversations, because I'm gonna keep talking about it. Not to say that money can fix everything, but if we don't get access to, because here's the thing, everybody wants to create a nonprofit to fix some particular wrong or evil in the world. So what does that require? That requires money. But it means we need to be smart about how to acquire it. We got to be smart about being philanthropic and giving it. We've got to know how to fundraise. We've got to know how to make the money. We've got to know how to distribute the money. Because see, here's the thing. Now, here comes folks asking you for money to fix the things that are evil in the world, but yet we have not learned the conversation of how to get money, how to keep money, how to save money, how to invest money. Tell me how that's working. Because the math ain't mathing. So you can't, and then we get mad because guess what? The government is going to continue to restrict more rights. If Biden is going to fix that student loan situation, Biden is going to have to do it with executive order. So you're sitting around waiting for the student loans. Now what you need to be doing, I'm not a parent, but if you got children, let your child be able either to fund like they can. They can send Johnny to Harvard because they're sitting as the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Then either you need to be able to fund Johnny to go to school and Jamal, or tell them to prepare educationally so they can get the scholarships. Because there are people who are philanthropic in the world who want to give scholarships away. But guess what? We're not applying. We wait until your child, you need to be trying to get your child into college. They need to be looking at the schools they want to look at and preparing. No, really ninth grade at the latest. And you need to be looking in your bank accounts. Do I have enough to send Jamal and Denise to school? Do I have enough money right now? Okay, because it's going to get worse before it gets better, but we can, and I'm getting ready to go because y'all tired of hearing from me anyway, but we can change this mess. We can. It can be fixed. Now, do I have all the answers? No, I don't have all the answers, but I know that if we can start within ourselves to, as Malcolm X told us, prepare educationally, to also get a handle and look around at the systems and begin to dismantle those systems, and to honestly remove ourselves from systems that oppress, even if those systems look like us. Get out of there. If that job is continuing to do microaggressions, now you can go and find another one. Because they're trying to hurry up and get y'all back into these buildings, and these towers of Babel. I'll come back and talk about that. These towers of Babel they built, they're trying to get you back in there, but you don't want to come back because you've been working at the house. I'll talk about that at another time. But we can do what we need to do to get ready and to get prepared, because we're in perilous times. But here's the thing. I'm a glass is half full kind of person. And so despite what's going on in the world, the reason why I want to know about it is so I know how to recognize the minefields so I don't go stepping in one. That's why I want to know what's going on. But at the same time, you need to, as my former dean and now bishop says, build a better mousetrap. And I'm going to give this to Bishop Thomas, Marvin Frank Thomas. He was always telling students at this HBCU called Phillips School of Theology, build a better mousetrap and people will find a way to come to your door. Build a better mousetrap. You want to catch mice? Figure out how to catch mice. Y'all hear me? All right, I'm out. I've been talking too long, and you're probably tired of hearing from me. But anyway, I'll come back and talk about, because everything is a political decision. And so we've got to be very careful. It's both the political and economic decisions that have consequences across the board. And it also plays out in the religion as well, in the religious aspect of things. And so people don't like to hear that. But I don't serve a small God. I serve a big God. And so I trust in the one that created me. And so I'm not worried about these fools. No, I'm not. But I am aware of them. And I like to stay on top of what they got going on. Okay? All right. Take care, everybody. God bless. Hope you have an amazing day. Hope this month is an amazing month for you. And I hope this rest of the year is amazing for you as well. And I hope that you have the opportunity to create the life that you wanted to create or co-create with the creator and the deity of your understanding. God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.